Is this a position that's being held even among progressives, though? That this war is, the problems with this war were a matter of tactics and a matter of how we went about doing it, rather than should it have been done at all.
Well, naturally, and I mean, it can be acceptable to critique on tactics on some levels. Obviously, choosing aerial bombardment kills a lot more civilians and destroys a lot more infrastructure than, say, more of a ground assault sort of mentality. And obviously, you can critique those sorts of tactics. It's really the bigger critique is, I mean, what's wrong with the war to you? I mean, is it that it's destroying the economy? Because it is. I mean, is it that your son got shot, which is a tragedy? Or do you care? I mean, there are higher levels of looking at it too, where it's causing human suffering, and it's causing massive ecological destruction, or that after the fall of Baghdad, there was rampant looting because the occupation was only concerned about protecting the Ministry of Oil. So thousands of years of civilization and artifacts were lost in Iraq, which is the cradle of
cultural devastation.
You have 5,000-year-old Sumerian artifacts winding up on eBay. I mean, that's a tragedy too. I mean, you can slice it 1,000 different ways.
Well, I don't think it can't be denied. I mean, hopefully we all agree that the reason we invaded Iraq is because that part of the world is an extremely politically strategic area to have control over.
It's a foothold in the region.
A lot of resources.
And
because oil, it's the world's primary source of oil, and oil is to this day the lifeblood of industrialization.
So if we, a lot of people who criticize the invasion, I've noticed that a lot of them, I mean, they still hold the position that the United States should be the absolute dominant force in the whole world. So they still.
The U.S. does have a right to rule the world, to own the entire world, but we've got to do it right. I mean, that's sort of the tactical argument.
And in this particular case, in order to do that, we have to control this region of the planet. It's just we have to control it. It has to be under our power, and so they still advocate doing that.
And I mean, and so some of that exceptionalism in the ideology of imperialism is breathtaking. I mean, listening to President Bush's speeches about foreign fighters on Iraqi soil while neglecting the 200 or 250,000 of them from this country that are occupying the country, which easily outnumber, the jihadis at least 10 to 1, easily, probably more like 100 to 1.
What's interesting to me, talking about the war, and you were talking about the right war, but just from an ideological perspective, considering that we have all these resources, we put massive amounts of taxpayer money into weapons of mass destruction and killing machines, and the question is, how should we utilize those resources that we have? That it's just taken as a granted that we should put that much of our resources into death and destruction and human suffering, and where should we apply that in the world? I think that says a lot about our system and how people think about it.
Well, Bill Clinton, what did he do that was in ways comparable to what Bush has been doing, but have gone just completely unnoticed?
Well, I mean, the sanctions regime has killed at least as many people probably as the war has.
And how much protesting? I mean, how much outrage? How much has that been criticized by the general masses of people? The way that the Iraq War has been criticized.
And I'm going to be a broken record about this, but this goes back to yet another really nasty aspect of this. The Democrats are a lesser evil idea, because a lot of these progressive people, these anti-war activists, these social justice activists, they get a Democrat in the White House and they go to sleep for the next 8 years. That's what we saw under Clinton. And Clinton was a bastard. I mean, he did things that Ronald Reagan could only have wet dreams about.
Will Obama be Clinton Part 2?
That's a good question. Yeah, I did want to take some time. I mean, let's break out our crystal balls here, gentlemen. I mean, what is an Obama administration going to look like?
Well, and if he will be very Clinton-esque, will he get much criticism for it, or will it be just like Clinton? And I mean, people still, Bill Clinton is still widely considered to be one of our best presidents.
Mm-hmm. To me, that's an issue. Mostly, what is he capable of, and kind of what you said, what can he get away with? What is the allowance of what he can do with his power?
And really, the thing is, I mean, another thing that could allow Obama to be really particularly bad. I mean, you also have to look at the sort of the political correctness factor in this country, where it's just, if you have an enforcer of racism and you put a spokesman in charge of the anti-affirmative action movement, Ward Connerly, as a black guy, and you can't accuse the anti-affirmative action movement of racism because their leader's a black guy. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The political correctness police jump on you. So, I mean, what about a black president? What's he going to do? Did I wonder how many Brits accused Maggie Thatcher when she was prime minister? She was obviously death to millions of poor British women on welfare. She was a very, very nasty person to them. She was obviously a force for sexism in that way. I mean, just really putting the screws to these poor women. And I'm sure she probably didn't hear that many comments about sexism because she was a woman.
Should I... Sometimes I wonder if I should... Maybe things are getting to me, but sometimes I feel like I should at least feel a little good about having a black president finally. just that little thing, that little tiny thing. It's
that
like
voice in the back of your head.
Well, yeah, I mean that one. I mean, despite everything that's been said about Obama that we've talked about, he is in the end the first black president of the United States. And is that progression at all?
It's not inherently worthless when you consider how people like him were getting lynched 30, 40 years ago. I mean, there's a sort of progress there, but it's also it's the tokenist. It's the progress of the token. It's the token black guy, the token woman, who can basically leave his community behind and play the role that the ruling class has given to them. There's a little bit of room for that Horatio Alger myth. If you're willing to be a cutthroat shark, if you're willing to play the game that the cutthroat sharks give you and be a part of that system and be as inhuman as they are, there is some limited capacity for advancement. It's true.
Well, there's a lot that has to be seen. Is Obama going to make things better for the millions of black people in the country that are living below the poverty line?
Has there been any indication that he will in fact do that? Has he even talked about it? Because honestly, I haven't. I mean, the speeches that I've heard from him don't say a whole lot. I mean, they talk a lot about it's hope and it's change and we're going to get better.
Surprise, surprise, folks. He's a politician.
Oh yeah, you can listen to an entire interview with him and maybe get one talking point on something he's going to do. It's meaningless.
So what will he do?
Well, honestly,
just in general, what is he probably going to do?
Well, I think there's a lot of reason to believe that he's going to be another Bill Clinton. And you're looking at the people he's filling his cabinet with. I mean, actually, when he was still on the primary trail, he tapped Zbigniew Brzezinski to be one of his foreign policy specialists. Now, that's a fun name to try to say, Zbigniew Brzezinski. And I'm not stuttering. That's a wonderful name. He was the national security advisor under President Carter and the man most responsible for creating the Mujahideen in Afghanistan.